Hello there, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fantasy for the Ages, the show where usually a father and son sit down and talk about fantasy fiction, sci fi, and whatever else we feel like today. Now, you may notice next to me, that is definitely not Zachary. I will introduce Spencer here in just a moment. But again, I just wanted to welcome all of you here and let you know that if you're with us here, Zach is not gone forever. He's just not on these Dresden Files episodes because he hasn't read the books yet. So if you communicate with us on Discord, on Twitter, on all the ways we're out there in social media, you have permission to start giving Zach a hard time because he's bought these books. They're awesome. If you're listening to this, you already know that because this is a full spoil episode of Book 3, Grave Peril. And if you haven't read it, what are you doing here? Shoo. Go read it first. Come on back, because we're going to have a lot of fun today talking about Book 3 of the Dresden Files. And we will not spoil anything beyond it, but we're also going to, as appropriate, talk about things, tie-ins from books 1 and 2. So again, I'm Jim. I'm the father. And who are you, Spencer? Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you and your content.
Sure. Yeah. So I am Spencer from the Fantasy Files. We are a podcast primarily on YouTube. We discuss all things fantasy and sci-fi, mostly books, like 99% books, but we do other stuff like TV shows and video games and stuff like that. My co-host could not be here today. His name is Gabe. He is on most of our content. I'm usually the person, I'm usually on all the content, and I'm usually the person interacting on Twitter and stuff. But Gabe is there in most of the episodes, discussing books with me. We also have a third co-host now who just became an official co-host. His name is Chris, and he's probably on, I'd say, maybe a 10th of the content, just because he reads really slow. But yeah, we love to hang out and talk about our favorite fantasy books or new reads, books that are new to us, and just have a good time. Usually longer content, usually about 2 hours, but it's good.
Except sometimes when you might invite me on and we go for 3 hours plus. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had the first chance to interact with Spencer when he brought me on for a Wheel of Time episode. He had just finished, was it
Dragon
Reborn? Yeah. And we just had such a good time talking on and on and on. And it was a blast. I think we even actually stopped and had to finish recording the next day because there was still more to get to.
And we wore the same clothes so that people wouldn't know.
And then we blew it and kind of let it out there anyways, but it was fun. So I really enjoyed that. Now, you've taken a pause on your Wheel of Time reading. Am I right?
Yes. So I was listening to the audiobook of The Shadow Rising, and I got about 40% of the way through. And part of it was that it was just a really busy week at work. And so I had a hard time kind of paying attention to it, but also there was a couple other books that were coming up very quickly for the podcast. And I was just so lost about halfway through, and I was enjoying it. Don't get me wrong. I still really, really like The Wheel of Time. But I think it was just not the right time to read that book, because it's like a 42-hour audiobook or something.
It's hefty. Yes, indeed.
Oh,
and there is no really short Wheel of Time book. I mean, they're all a commitment, no doubt. Yeah. Well, let's see. At that point in the book, you are getting so close to some really profound stuff for the entire story.
Can I say a vague thing of where I'm at?
Yes.
Okay.
Vague hint. So if they know, they know.
Right. Okay. So Rand is in the desert place doing the
thing.
Yeah. Okay.
That is my favorite part of the book, to be honest with you.
Oh, okay.
The reveals you get there, it's like, yeah, Yeah.
See, I didn't understand any of them, but you probably do because you've reread them.
It's true. It makes much more sense on a reread when you have the context of the rest of the story. That is true. My wife is also reading The Wheel of Time. She, after me trying to get her to read it, since the 90s, and she is currently on book 7. Okay, so
Wow.
she made it through The Shadow Rising. She just really enjoyed it. But
Yeah.
I ask her, hey, so what'd you just read? What do you think, as she works her way through? And after she was with Rand in the desert place doing the thing, I was like, so what'd you think? She's like, eh.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
what do
how
you
I
mean?
felt.
So it's not uncommon the first time through. Now, a tip.
Yeah.
If you want, this is hard to do with the audiobook, but it's possible. Go through that section backwards.
Oh.
So take the last chapter of the things he's seeing and experiencing, and do that one, then go back to the previous chapter and the previous. It's more sections than chapters, which is
Okay.
why it's hard with the audiobook.
Well,
But they make a lot more sense. And if you can do it with the actual physical book, far simpler.
I have the
You've got it.
I
You've
have the
got it.
physical book there. So yeah, I may have to do that for sure and just kind of go back and work my way through.
Yeah, I actually got that tip for the first time from the What Spoilers podcast, and it made a lot of sense. So I did that and went, oh yeah, look, the connections kind of fit better, and you're not so lost. So it's a good tip. So we're not actually here talking about Wheel of Time today, but it gave us good context. So that's how Spencer and I first connected, and I found the Fantasy Files, and I've subscribed to their YouTube channel. They do have great content there, so check it out, guys. And I'll put a link down in the show notes here where you can easily just click and hop over to their channel and check things out too. But they'd also discovered that I was enjoying the Dresden Files. I was putting that out on Twitter and going through the books blazing fast because I couldn't stop reading them. They were so much fun. And so after I finished, they invited me on. We did another collaboration just talking about the whole series. Now, again, if you haven't finished the books, if like doing this along with us, do not go watch that episode. It will ruin so much for you. But when you're finished, go find that episode that we did together. We had a blast talking about the whole series up through book 17.
It was a ton of fun.
Yeah. So thanks for inviting me on to that. That was with both you and Gabe. We had a great time. I think it's a solid episode. And now I was happy to invite you to come on over here and let's go back in time a little bit and just talk about book 3.
I'm super excited to talk about this.
Sweet. A few housekeeping things then before we jump into that content. Zach and I always talk about what we're drinking, what beverage we've brought today. Sometimes we create some creative ones. Do you happen to have anything that you're drinking today, Spencer?
I did. So I saw this in the notes, what am I drinking today? And usually I have some sort of bourbon drink, but I am completely out of bourbon right now. I need to go pick some up at some
that's
point.
a crime. That's a crime. What?
I know. So I definitely need to go get a good bottle of bourbon. But so I just went to the store today and I picked up an Elysian. Is it in the camera there? Elysian Space Dust.
There's nothing wrong with that. That's a tasty beverage.
Yeah,
absolutely. I am not out of bourbon, which was important because I tried something really unique this morning, and it actually started last night. I made cinnamon rolls this morning, but just the kind out of the refrigerator section at the store that you're gonna go ahead and bake. But I found a recipe to do something weird with them, and so the last step is I made them in an air fryer. I don't know if you have an air fryer, but they're fairly cheap and they cook things amazing. So I recommend an air fryer. Okay. But for these cinnamon rolls, I unwound them first, kind of opened them up into a long strip. And I put bacon on them and then wrapped them back up with bacon.
Oh, wow.
And I cooked them that way. But But wait, there's more. Because last night I took that bacon and I put it in bourbon. So it
Oh,
sat and soaked up bourbon all night long. And then this morning, drained the bourbon, wrapped up these. So these were bacony bourbon cinnamon rolls.
wow.
They were pretty good.
Yeah.
They were pretty good. So,
That's
so
awesome.
it reminds me I have some leftovers. So I may have to go hit some more cinnamon rolls after the episode.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, couple other housekeeping things then. His drink was that. Mine is right here. You guys can all see it. It's called the Wallach. For Dresden, I've just been kind of going to some classic cocktails. So I didn't invent this one. The Wallach is simply a teaspoon of triple sec, and then a shot and a half of gin, shot and a half of dry vermouth. So you could say kind of martini-ish, but that triple sec gives it just a dose of sweetness.
Nice.
Very pleasant. As always, the recipe is on our drink recipes channel here in Discord, and we'll drop it into our Instagram channel.
I'm definitely gonna have to go look at that now that I'm on your Discord, because I have the same like 3 basic bourbon drinks that I just make over and over.
Oh, we have so many recipes over there now, and a bunch of them I invented because we make some special ones for Wheel of Time episodes. We call them Watt Tales. So yeah, check them all out. I'll admit, a lot of them are great, and a few of them you'll never drink again.
Okay.
We'll let you experiment per your own tastes.
All right, cool.
That is a great reminder for everybody. We're on Discord. Come find us. There's an invite in our Twitter bio. Oh, that means we're on Twitter. Come find us on Twitter. We're on Facebook once in a great while, because it really should die and go away. But we're there, so you can find us, and we're on Instagram. So we'll hope you connect with us. Links to all those ways to find us are in the show notes. Speaking of show notes, I want to notify you again. Spoilers. We follow the spoiler light format still. So for this book, we're going to talk all we want and spoil everything. But future books, we may hint at some things. We will not ruin your experience. So any kind of spoiler about future stuff is just lightly noted. And if we go too far, it's Zach's fault. I know he's not here, but he's the one that struggles the most with that. So we will blame Zach. Last note, we're still having our Frosty mug giveaway right now. So if you go to find our audio content on Apple Podcast, you can drop a review for us. We're looking for some more reviews, people. 4 or 5-star review or rating with a review that says something like, yay, guys, or whatever. It doesn't have to be long, but if you show up there, you go into our drawing. And any new reviews by the end of April, we're going to pull 2 of those and send you our Fantasy for the Ages Frosty mugs as a gift. So you still have time. Get in there before the end of April. All right. All that's done. Let's get to some content, Spencer. How's that sound?
Yeah, let's do it.
This book, Grave Peril. Like, wow. Honestly, the events of this book, I find they really trigger a lot of what's going to happen the rest of the way now. The first 2 books of the series, they're kind of setting some foundation. They're doing some world building, but here, some stuff goes next level. And when you're reading it, you don't know that yet.
Right.
You can't really appreciate what you're experiencing. And it is still a self-contained story. You know, a lot of these books, I think you'd agree, are very episodic. You know, we've got today's story of the week, you know, or of the year, because there are time jumps between books.
Yeah.
So I find Butcher does stick to that. It's very episodic, but wow. I mean, the stuff he's rolling out this time.
That's a great way to put it, because the until probably changes, it stays pretty episodic. But this is the first book in the series where it goes from that kind of monster of the week thing to these are story beats that are going to set up things for, like, this is where it starts getting more serialized, I think.
Yes.
Because the first 2 books, I mean, there might be references to them in later books, but there's not a lot of story beats that continue that kind of shockwave throughout the rest of the series from those
Right.
two.
Right.
This is where the
Yeah.
story really starts.
I do feel some people don't give enough credence to those first two books because, as you work your way through the later books, there are some callbacks that if you've forgotten
Yeah.
things from Stormfront, you're missing it completely. But there are some definite callbacks that I appreciate. Things that he laid out there that, maybe Jim Butcher was more like he's writing book 15, 14, 13, whatever, and goes, wait a second, there was that thing in Stormfront. I could connect to that now,
Hmm.
where it wasn't
Yeah.
really a plan. It's just convenient now. Whereas things do seem, I think, more planned starting with book 3.
So I was going to ask you about that. What do you think about, so there are things that are introduced in this book, like like how homes have a threshold and how monsters can't get in and stuff that
Mm-hmm.
weren't explicitly, I mean, there might have been a little bit of it in the previous two books, but we get a lot of it in this one when he's going to Mickey Malone's house and kind of talking about, well, he has a bachelor pad, and so monsters can
Right.
get in easier and stuff. And I've heard a lot of complaints about this book, how there's that and a couple other things that are dropped in regards to like the ghosts and stuff. That some people feel like it was just convenient for the plot to like drop those things in now. Do you feel that way? Do you feel like it was kind of rushed into the series in this book, or do you feel like it came in smoothly enough?
Emmeline in our Discord is adding in here the thought that first two books, it was kind of like drip feed of world building, just little
Yeah.
bits here, little bits there, and her point of view, if you take then book 3, that it's just adding some more, it's makes it easier for the reader to digest. So
Yeah.
I love that perspective, Emmeline. That was great. And I didn't feel like book 3 was suddenly now conveniently he's adding all these other things.
Right.
It's more like he's telling a story in each of these books, and you can only share so much.
Right.
I mean, Jim Butcher gets the same, because of the same thing, gets complaints for book 1 and book 2 that they're too slow because there's so much world building.
Yeah.
And I'm
That
like,
makes sense.
well, and then we're going to give him a hard time in book 3 because he now throws in things he hadn't introduced yet. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, come on, give the
Right.
guy a break. So I did feel nothing introduced in book 3 contradicted things from the first two books. It
Yeah.
just added stuff that, hey, why didn't we know that yet? Well, need to know. We didn't need to know yet.
Yeah, for sure. I when I started these books, I read them completely out of order.
Mm,
And so I started I
ouch,
I
that just hurts my brain.
I know. I started with Proven Guilty and then went to White Knight and then kind of went backwards and forwards from there. It was it
Wow.
was super weird. So all of these concepts had already been established. So I've always been curious what people thought when they were coming into the series and these things were getting introduced.
Sure. So yeah, my perspective, the flow works.
Right on.
It wasn't too much.
For sure.
But still, in this book, there's a lot introduced. And one of the things that I want to highlight here is that this is the first time it's really, I felt, emphasized that there's a lot of other stuff going on between books. He's a private investigator. He's a professional wizard. He's not just sitting there doing nothing between book
Right.
1 and book 2, between book 2 and book 3, or even before book 1. There's all sorts of other events and things that are happening, and this book really starts to tie into those, the ones that weren't in books. It brings references that are relevant, and I've mentioned it before, but I definitely need to highlight it again here, that some of those things happening between books, Butcher does eventually start filling in with his short stories.
Right.
So some people think of short stories with some of these kinds of series as like extra. If you really loved it, well, here's a little extra for you. You might enjoy. That is not what I find the short stories to be here. They're necessary. If
Oh
you
yeah.
skip them, you are missing out. By the time you get to book 16 and 17, it is not as good if you don't have the context of the short stories.
100%. Yes.
Yeah. So, if you're new to Dresden Files still, go find Side Jobs and Briefcases. Those are the collections that have nearly all of the short stories. You can also find a couple of others just on Jim Butcher's website.
I was just about to mention that. Yep.
Yeah.
They come into play around Turncoat, though, I think.
Right, where they become that much more relevant.
Yeah.
And then especially, I mean, this is, again, spoiler light. There's this particularly tall, fuzzy person later on that if you didn't read the short stories, you're like, who the heck are you? How did you come into all this?
Yeah.
So you gotta have those.
Yeah, for sure.
I have been dropping in the episode. Discord said, Chewy? Chewy's in this? Okay, not quite. That was good. I do drop a link in the show notes for all of these episodes to a particular webpage that I thought did a great job of showing how the short stories weave into the stories. So if you're one of those people that likes to read them kind of in a chronological order that makes some sense, I recommend this particular one website. It really helped me to get the most out of the short stories blending in as I was a first-time reader. So look for that.
Can I mention one thing? Because you mentioned how Harry does stuff outside of the books, like in between books, he's always doing stuff. And I would say one of my very few complaints with this book is that, the kind of flashback we get to Kravos when they first fight Kravos and like how he, Harry has that dream and everything. I kind of think that should have been the flashback at the beginning of this book instead of the whole Agatha Hagglethorne thing. Do you see what I'm saying? Because
I do.
Because I feel like that one part was kind of thrown in the middle, and when it was happening, it's like, oh, okay, and like, I don't know, maybe it would have given us too much of a clue if it had happened at the beginning.
That's my counter argument that I'm going to throw here, is that would set it up too obviously. This is a key element to what you're experiencing in the story, and it would steal from the reveal much later in the book. Whereas when they lead with Agatha Hagglethorne, we're introducing a new element to the Dresden universe. Ghosts. That goes surreal, that there's a significance here. And that puts you down a different rabbit hole for a while that I think Jim Butcher uses pretty well, even with the relevance of ghosts and then the tie-in to the Never Never that he throws in right away. I mean, he did specific things there that I thought were pretty important.
Yeah.
But I can see your argument. I prefer the way it is for reasons. So there you go.
That's fair.
I respect everybody's opinion and their right to be wrong, though. I tell Zach that all the time. So this relevance of there being other things that have happened in between stories, there's a couple of key ways that builds into this story. One of those is that he and Susan Rodriguez have been a bit of a thing now. They were, flirtatious and definitely interested earlier. And no. There's been much more. They're next level now. So we've bypassed some of the experiences they've clearly had, but they are far more advanced as a relationship now.
Yeah.
And that's obviously pretty important in this book. But we also skip over the way that he and Michael Carpenter meet. So by the time this comes along, these two have clearly been doing some things from time to time now.
So I got the feeling, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but I got the feeling that they had known each other for even longer than probably like the summer or whatever before this happened. I had a feeling that they had known each other for at least a couple of years.
Yes. And that's one that I have seen in the fandom. People are like, seriously? There was this Michael Carpenter guy he was doing things with, and you mentioned nothing about that before?
Yeah.
That was maybe legit. Maybe.
It makes me wonder if Michael was thought of for the first time for this book. Like he hadn't been, in Jim's head before.
Yes. And I would say 100%. He hadn't thought of this yet. When he wrote the first two books, nope. But revisionist history, I can say with those first two books, what happens during them is so intense and
Hmm.
so, specific to the time it's happening that it would be perfectly practical that he's not bringing up people or things that aren't relevant to the events he's dealing with at those moments. I mean,
Right.
that's real world. I
Well, I
can
mean,
live with that.
there's books in the future where I don't want to mention any characters that haven't been introduced yet, but like Thomas, there's books in the future where Thomas isn't even mentioned in the entire book simply
Correct.
because he wasn't relevant to the story.
Yep. Yep. So we can say that was the case for Michael for the first
Yeah.
two books. We're having to be kind and generous to Jim Butcher to do that. But let's go with
Yeah.
that because we like these books. But
For
wow,
sure.
Michael Carpenter. What a
Yes.
character. I mean, I
Oh
I think
man.
he's one of the best people. Just best people. Forget about his role. He's such a good guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that's emphasized on when he, we hear that kind of in flashback, just talking back about when he first connected with Harry and that, he insisted on, this soul gaze thing. We need to know each
Yeah.
other. And that, Harry's feel was like almost, I'm not worthy because he's
Yeah.
so pure, so good. And Harry
Oh.
knew that's not what you saw when you looked at me.
I would love to see that soul gaze. Could you imagine soul gazing Michael
Oh
Carpenter?
man. Whew.
Oh, be too much.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say almost all of us would feel um, we don't deserve to be in the same room with this guy. He's
Yeah,
just too good. Uh,
100%.
but
He
then,
uh,
go ahead.
what do you think of this thing at the beginning where they're talking about Susan? Him and since you mentioned Susan earlier, Michael and Harry are talking about Susan, and he's like, "You need to tell her that you love her, and like you should marry her, and all this stuff." And Harry's like, "I don't know if I want to do that." He's being his typical stubborn self for whatever
Hmm.
I've never understood his reasoning behind that, but it's a plot point, right?
Commitment
Yeah,
issues.
for sure. And but that becomes like a huge thing in this book. And I'm not, gonna give any spoilers or anything, but it becomes a huge thing later. Like his does he love her, does he not kind of
Hmm.
mentality that he
Hmm.
has in this book, that thing that he struggles with.
That
Uh
personality trait is going to
yeah,
continue to be an issue for him. Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
100%.
But Michael, of course, yeah, he's the good guy. So he's like basically saying, you need to make an honest woman of her. That's kind of where he's coming from. You
Right.
got to tell her, you got to do the right thing. And he's not condoning Harry's behaviors at this point.
Right.
Let's talk a little detail about Michael Carpenter. Okay,
Yeah.
we learn here he is a Knight of the Cross. What do you think about this aspect of them? That he works on faith. He goes where he's sent. I mean,
Right.
interesting.
So I really love this part of the books because and it's so hard to talk about without things that happen in the future, but he I love this idea of first of all just what he is, like this knight that has this sword, or there's three of them that have these swords that have a nail from the actual cross worked into them. And the idea is that God kind of works through them to defeat the evil that they fight. But there are very specific rules. Like you have to work within the power that the Almighty is giving you to fight this darkness.
Which comes
Um,
up pretty big partway through the plot of this story.
oh yeah,
Ooh.
and I just love this idea of just the difference between Harry's magic and Michael's magic. Um, Harry, his is all about himself. Like five, what is it? Five elements born, bound into the human will. And
Mm-hmm.
it's all
Mm-hmm.
up to the human and their emotions and the will that they have behind their spells to cast this magic. Michael's magic comes, he is simply a conduit. There is a higher power that is working
Right.
through him to put whatever comes out of Michael, whatever kind of magic that is, it is being worked not by him, but he is asking for the greater power to send the magic through him and defeat the darkness. And this is the reason I bring this up, is it's so cool later on when Michael says like a simple prayer or something, and Harry is like, whoa, like that was like a powerful burst of magic, but it wasn't coming from Michael. There was like a strong hum of energy coming through him. And we see that a little bit in this book. And so I love that whole concept.
Emmeline in Discord is chiming into that, also how cool it was to introduce God as an element, a real element in this book, as a player in the supernatural in a sense, but in a spiritual way. That also is real. It also has power. It's different from the other kind of stuff, but it's real. You don't have any god magicians out there, god wizards. You don't.
Right.
And you did a nice job describing something with Michael on how he uses that power. But I want to play into it just a little more. Something I really appreciate about Michael and what he can do with, his sword. I've never listened to the audiobooks. Amarachius, is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. How he's able to do things both with the sword and just with what he does. I never get the sense, or I shouldn't say never, I nearly ever get the sense that Michael is ever trying to do God juju at people. He's just doing what he thinks he's supposed to do. And then he has absolute faith that as long as his motives are pure, as he's working as he believes he's supposed to, again, belief, faith, then God's going to see it through. And he also has the complete faith that if it all blows up and he dies, well, that was the plan. Yeah. So I got nothing to stress about here. And that drives Harry crazy.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head there, because he's skilled. He knows how to use a sword and stuff, but he is going into battle not really knowing how God is going to work through him. And he's kind of swinging his sword and he's praying while he's doing it. And these kind of giant feats of just strength and magical energy kind of come through him at very random times. And there's times in the later books where he's like, oh, wow, I didn't really know that the faith was going to work in that kind of way, or I didn't know it was going to express itself in that particular way. And so he, like I said, he's just simply a conduit. He's going in there with total faith, knowing that his God will protect him.
And it's such the opposite of what we're learning about Harry. I think it's been mentioned already. Wizards really aren't all that powerful unless they have preparation. If they know what they're going into and they have an idea of a plan, and certainly that's what Harry's thinking when he goes into the vampire party. He's got a plan. It's a weak plan. He knows it, but he at least has an idea of what he's going to try to do or be prepared to do. And if a wizard is caught completely off guard, he's practically helpless because he had no preparation time. There's very little he can do. And then Michael never is prepared. He just goes forth boldly, trusting the Lord will guide his steps. Harry is like, They make such a wonderful pair to see spending time together because of their different worldviews. I love it.
I think it's even in this book where Michael's going in his full plate mail, and Harry's like, Michael, you can't wear that. Like, you absolutely can't wear that. And he's like, I have total faith that this will work out.
Of course, when he tells him you can't wear that, and we aren't told yet what Harry's wearing, the reveal's coming, but that was hilarious. We'll talk about that. We'll get there. I know that is a favorite part of this whole book for a lot of people.
If I can just say one more thing about the kind of Michael Carpenter faith magic stuff before we move on. I just want to say that Jim Butcher does, and it gets even better as the books go on, but Jim Butcher does such a good job of bringing Christianity, Catholicism, like this whole kind of religious aspect into the books. And it never feels like, even though Harry makes jokes about it and stuff, it never feels like condescending or anything. Like I was grown up with a fairly religious background, and making my way through these books, I'm like, wow, he really he either grew up in a religious background or he really did his research when he was writing these, because most of it is really spot on, if I'm
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
honest.
No, agree. I'm Christian. I read this
Oh, cool.
stuff and I'm like, yeah, yeah, he gets it. But I also appreciate, and again, we don't get too much of this in this book, but it'll come. He doesn't try to, some authors, they put in the church as the stupid doofuses who,
Right.
and they're all corrupt and whatever. And some that'll put it in and it's the all holy and wonderful. And actually, he gives a fairly realistic, and again, that's stuff beyond this book we can't talk about, but
Sure. Yeah.
you know where I'm going there. So I
Yeah, for
agree with
sure.
you. I appreciate the way he does bring this in here. I also like, and this is something that plays in well with D&D, which my son is big into, and I was back in the day and introduced him to it as a child. Now I live vicariously through him. But with D&D, the paladin, which is what
Mhm.
Michael really is,
Lawfully
uh,
good.
the energy of a paladin is faith-based. And we see other stuff that's faith-based in the Dresden Files. For example, Harry's pentacle. That's
Yes.
his belief in that. It has nothing to do with God at that point, but it's
Right.
still the belief in it that makes it something he can use in these scenarios. So
That is
there's
a
something
great
about
point. Yeah.
faith-based belief that has power.
And I think it's either, I know it's in one of the first three, but he does mention, if enough people believe in something as a whole, whether it's a concept or a spell or whatever, like there is like a magical, I don't know how to phrase it exactly, but if enough people believe in something, then it's real in a magical sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And that won't have any relevance later in the series.
No.
Okay. We've had in the series so far a lot of different elements of the supernatural introduced. We've had, vampires, we've had werewolves, we've had demons, we've had the fae, the fairies. The new one, of course, in this book, we alluded to it once earlier, was ghosts. Okay, so Agatha Hagglethorne, what a tragic character.
Yeah.
What a dark scenario there. I mean, come on, you're messing with babies? You don't
Yeah.
mess with babies. That's like kicking dogs. I mean, you don't do these things. So instantly, ooh, this is bad. Interesting what we learn about ghosts. What did you think of the whole Agatha Hagglethorne plot
Um,
plot arc there?
so first of all, is the first couple chapters of this book not just an episode from Supernatural?
Oh, totally. Loved that show, by the way.
Yes.
Totally loved that show.
But also we get introduced into these things called shades. And I always thought that this was kind of interesting because they're not necessarily the same person that died. They're kind of a snapshot of that person's life that are carried on into this metaphysical kind of sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I always think it's interesting when I'm going through this book. In the beginning, we see that Agatha, she had an abusive husband or something, right? It was
There's
something.
tragedy in her background. Yes.
Yeah. And so that what we kind of learn in these books is that any strong emotion will have a large impact on the metaphysical. And so something like that in her life compounded when she became a shade. And, then she became like this person or this shade who has no idea what she's doing. She's hurting these babies, but in her head, she thinks that she is just continuing her life. She has no idea she's a shade.
Right.
And so she's going on to commit these like terrible things. And Harry is trying to remind her, like, no, remember you died, like your husband killed you or whatever happened. And she's like adamant about, no, like I am not dead. And so I always really love this beginning because it shows it just introduces ghosts into such an interesting way, and we can kind of see what makes them tick a little bit there.
Yep, definitely. It was another aspect too that I enjoy about most of these Dresden File books, that there's no ease into the story. We get thrown into action, book after book. Just now we've got this thing, and then we get past it, and now we'll move on with the story. But this was what it was for this one, and yet I think Jim Butcher used it for much more this time around than he did in the first two books.
Yeah.
Now, with ghosts, we also have ectoplasm. And we learn there's more to ectoplasm in the Dresden universe than just ghosts.
Yes.
So, anyone who's watched Ghostbusters has heard of ectoplasm. And of course, if you were a fan of Supernatural, ectoplasm exists there too. But what is ectoplasm in the Dresden File universe?
So this is an incredibly I've always really, really enjoyed the ectoplasm thing, because like what an amazing way. Jim Butcher is so smart. What an amazing way to bring in this thing from something like Ghostbusters, and make it a core part of the supernatural. And just like it explains so many things. There's I'm afraid to get into it too much because it'll get used in really interesting ways later on.
Yes, it will.
But it's kind of a catch-all of the material matter of the supernatural. And he's just so smart for bringing this into his series, because it explains so many things in such an interesting way. Basically, when something is not any supernatural being, but when something from the never or the spirit world either comes in or out of the spirit world or dies, it leaves behind, instead of a body, it leaves behind this ectoplasm. And then the ectoplasm is gooey and sticky, but it disappears after a while and it completely goes away. And just what a smart way to make sure that there's no like fey bodies laying around Chicago. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just a great way to explain away
the disbelief of the world. Yeah. And this is how you do it. It all goes away.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it makes sense. I mean, whatever has crossed over from the other world there, it only exists here as long as it's basically powered in whatever way, consciously or, whatever it is that's powering it. And if that power ends, the being is killed, the being is removed, the thing, whatever, just now you've got ectoplasm. Right. It disappears pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was pretty cool. And ectoplasm, as you alluded to, will continue to play a role. But it's another element that I enjoy about what Jim Butcher is doing in the Dresden Files, in that he keeps thinking of what else can I use and bring in and now make it my own in a way. And he's just excellent at that throughout the series. A lot of things that we're very familiar with from pop culture, from fantasy or horror, that now, oh, that's what you're doing with it. And I never feel like he does something where I'm like, no, come on, man. Nah, that's not how it works. It always makes sense what he does, but it takes it somewhere new.
And I think that's a main reason why this series, more than any other one, attracts non-fantasy readers. Because there's so many people I know who do not read fantasy. Like they don't read like Wheel of Time or Night Angel trilogy or anything else, but they love the Dresden Files because it's not, and I don't mean this in a bad way, it's not introducing anything new necessarily. These are, like you said, these are all things that we are familiar with. We're familiar with vampires and werewolves and ghosts and ectoplasm, and a million other things that are in these books, the Fae. But he brings us in with those ideas that we're already familiar with, and then he just puts a twist on it to make it his own and to make it make sense in this world. And that just locks you in as a fan, I think.
Absolutely. All right. Wow, this is going to end up a 3-hour episode. Okay, we're going to try not to do that, but there's so much to talk about. This next point, let's talk about this pretty brief, but we get this great scene when he gets back to his office where Lydia shows up. Okay, the character Lydia. And wow, I mean, she comes in and basically says, I need help and I will buy it with sex. It was pretty brazen, and
Yeah.
Harry's like, uh
He's like, you've done this before.
we really get to see something though of Harry's character here.
Yeah.
And this has been introduced earlier. It's going to stay true though. At the core, this is a guy of integrity and goodness. He really
Yeah.
is. So the woman's like ready to throw herself at him, and he's not touching that. He's not taking any of that. No, 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 we don't play like that.
Right. A- and that's an interesting thing about Harry in general. This series gets a lot of flack from some people about like, oh, Harry's misogynist or whatever, and because of all the over description of all the female
Mhm.
characters in the books.
Yep.
But like you said, at his core, like he does notice these things. He does notice when women are very attractive. But at his core, he's got this like rock solid integrity that he simply will not break, and he will not debate on. He will not, he
He will
just
pay the
won't.
price for it. He
Yeah,
will.
he won't give on his kind of his line that he's drawn in the sand, and he has a few of them.
Mhm,
And so
mhm.
those scenes are really important to kind of make up his character. It makes him come off as kind of stubborn sometimes, but it also gives you a dependability to his character. No matter what he goes through, that at the end of the day, this is his foundation, kind of these core sets of
Yeah.
principles that he has.
So there's a lot of those interactions he has with women in general that tells you, man, Harry, you still have the brain of a 16-year-old boy. Okay. But he has the maturity with it that he will not ever act on these thoughts
Right.
and admirations in his head. No, he keeps those internalized. I'm a grown man. I can behave myself. There is something with Lydia we learn that I wanted to just see if you had thoughts about this introduction of Cassandra's tears, which is,
Yeah.
it didn't do as much in the story as they might have done with it, but it is
Mhm.
an element. There is some significance. Any thoughts about Cassandra's tears?
Yeah. So I definitely think it could have been utilized better. I think there could have been like a really cool prophecy scenario that we just got for one book, or maybe something that she would say that would overarch a bunch of books. Like she could set up some sort of, prophecy in motion. And it's kind of a bummer that didn't happen. Um, but if I'm sorry if this is vague, very vague spoilers, but we never see it again. We never really run into Cassandra's tears again.
It's true.
And so it's kind of weird to get it in this book and then just like, oh yeah, we're just gonna forget about that.
Hey, 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 maybe book 18.
Maybe book 18. Yeah, it'll come.
Wouldn't that be something?
It'll come
And
back in
the
the end.
callback, he set it up way back here. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
If fans have been giving him grief about that, I can see Jim doing that. I'm working it
Yeah,
now. They said I forgot
sure.
about it.
He's he's said that there are characters from book one who will come back when you least expect them near the end of the
Love
series.
that.
So
I
I
love that.
don't doubt that he'll work some of these things back in.
I was talking with one of our Discordians earlier today about, how long is this series going to go? And a lot of us have, seen the writings and even comments Butcher has made, maybe 22, 23 books, something like that is his long-term plan.
Right.
But at the level he's still producing these, I don't care. Just keep
Yeah.
giving them to us, as long as it doesn't decline,
I
as
was
he
just about to
hasn't
say.
yet.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. As long
And
as
he's
it
got a
doesn't get
lot of
stale.
material he can still work with what's out
Yeah.
there. He's still got Cassandra's tears, man. Come on, you got stuff to work with. Speaking of stuff he's laying out here in this book to work with, another key character gets introduced as Father Foothill, and the tie-in with faith magic. We learned some things there. We've talked on the faith magic element before already, but Father Foothill,
Fort Hill.
interesting. Fort Hill,
Yeah.
wow. That's
Matter of
one of
fact,
those typos. Wow.
I corrected your notes on my end. I don't know if you can see it.
No, I'm looking at an older copy. Oh my goodness. Yes, I know it's Father Fort Hill. That's hilarious. Zachary would never let me live that down. So feel free, Spencer, be the vicarious Zachary here and
All right.
give me grief all you want. I was saying it, I'm like, it didn't sound right, but it's what I have written in front of me. Anyways. Nice. Thanks, Evelyn. Totally true. Okay. But we get introduced to him and his church, and I mean there's some cool elements there again of what holy ground is, and again the tie-ins to stuff that's happened before. I mean, where he makes that comment, I mean he's already knows Harry, and the bit about the holy water in bulk that he provided,
Yes, that was great. Oh my God. Yes.
And that's kind of unorthodox. No one's asked me for that before, but at the same time that Father Fort Hill hadn't blinked. He was ready to roll with it. It tells us something about this character. This is a little something. That's not your average priest. Okay.
Right.
There's something a little extra with this guy. And obviously, we'll see more connections with that.
Yeah.
Another element introduced in this story, it's just almost a small throwaway thing, but that Bob can communicate over the radio.
Yeah. So this is interesting because if Harry gets too close to technology, then he blows it up.
Mm-hmm.
But we see through this example, and we'll see it more later, is that it's not it is. So it's not magic itself that ruins technology. It's the way that it is put through the way that it's used through mortals. Something about mortals having magic kind of exudes this Murphyonic field, as he calls it, where anything that can go wrong with technology will go wrong. But Bob is not a mortal. He is a spirit of intellect, so he can naturally move through this technology, i.e. the radio.
Yep. Now, a lot of people reading this may not realize it, but this was another example of Jim Butcher pulling something from the real world, what we've, in other contexts have learned about, and now applying it in his, because there are genuine people who believe spirits can talk through radio waves.
Oh, I see what you're getting at. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's out there. I did a tour in Miami a couple of years ago, and it was technically a food tour of Miami, South Beach stuff, but it was also thrown in there a spirit tour. And the guide is talking about this haunted place and that haunted place. And actually brought us to a shop where a guy has a radio where you every now and then will hear the spirits talking. And I'm like, can we go to the next place where there's food and a cocktail? But he had recordings of it, that we could listen to, and it's whatever. Right. But it's a real thing that some people believe in. Whether it's not, it's a real thing. Who knows? But there he is, dropping another element into the Dresden universe.
Yeah, that's a good point. I honestly didn't even think about the pop culture reference there. That's very cool.
Yeah. Okay, another thing that's introduced here, and this is all still this part I'm going to talk about comes back from the beginning with Agatha Hagglethorne and stuff. They get away into the Never Never, and we're gonna have. Okay, he had concern about going into the Never Never. And the reason was there are bad things that could happen to him there. And later in the story, some of those bad things are going to happen to him there.
Yeah.
One of those is Hellhounds. Okay. Yeah. What do you think of Hellhounds, Spencer?
Yeah, they're first of all, they're awesome. They're a sweet fantasy creature, but also I just have this quote here where Michael or they're the Hellhounds show up, and can I swear on here?
Yes, you can. I
Okay.
don't. Zachary
Okay.
does. You're
Okay.
the Zach
Just
today, so go for it.
just for the quote, Harry goes Harry sees the Hellhounds and he goes, "Oh shit, Hellhounds." And Michael goes, "Harry, you know I don't like it when you swear." And he goes, "Sorry, Michael. Oh shit, Heckhounds."
Yep. Yep. And
That is
that kind
one of
of
my
humor
all-time
I
favorite.
love in Dresden Files. It's great. Yep.
Oh, I love that
Discord
so
agrees.
much.
I mean,
Yeah.
that sort of stuff is just so good.
That is the best quote. Other than that, I don't have too much to say about Hellhounds. They come in later in a big way.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
I think, forgive me if I'm misremembering, but I think it's in this book where Leah says she wants to make him into a hound.
Yes.
She wants to turn
Yes.
him into one of her dogs. Okay.
It's true. Yep.
Yeah.
And so let's spin off by talking about Leanne and she.
Yeah.
Yeah. Harry's godmother? What the heck?
Yeah.
um, and that there's some past deal between them. We don't get all of the elements here yet. We get pieces.
Yeah.
But whoa,
H-
whoa.
how much do you love that we really, like, when it really comes down to it, we don't know a lot about Harry's backstory besides a
No.
few key points. And Leah is now introduced as one of the kind of rotating things that has happened in his past.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, she's she's such an odd character, especially going forward, because she is equally helpful and terrifying. Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
in equal measure, she helps him in many ways, but she also wants to enslave him and turn him
Yep.
into one of her captives.
But we learn that she's motivated. She's driven by certain rules. This is
Yeah,
just who she is. Some of this is not necessarily conscious choice for her. This is how she is designed, so she has to try to use Harry, get Harry, manipulate Harry because he owes her.
right.
There's a deal that hasn't been closed, you know,
Yes,
and and this is something that is clearly introduced in this book, that the Fae are governed in a way that they will make bargains with you,
right.
and then they are bound, but they expect you to pull your weight too. And Harry's played a little fast and loose with that.
Yeah, mortals are on the interesting side of that because they can back out of deals and agreements and stuff, and the Fae cannot. They are magically bound to many things that I probably can't mention, but one of them being like the guest rights. The idea of inviting someone into your home or area or something, and then having to treat them as a guest. They are magically bound by those kind of things, and
Yep.
deals are one of them.
I just dropped something into Discord there, kind of a combination of a fairy and Bob. Bob would be very happy if that was Leah and she looked like that in that position. Yeah.
What? So jumping off of that, though, we do learn Bob says something in this book. He's like, I cannot go to, like, you gotta, like, don't take me to fairy. Like, don't, like, if you try
Mhm.
to run out of here, don't just throw me under a rock or something. I have enemies in fairy. It would not be good for you to leave me here.
So this is
Um,
telling us there's some history with Bob, stuff
yeah,
we don't know. And this ties in nice with what you said a moment about Harry, too. There's history, there's background here that we don't
yeah,
know. And again, spoiler light, you're gonna learn more, people, as you go
right,
forward. And I appreciate Jim Butcher's writing that the things we will eventually learn, they are, in book 3 at least, already impacting the decisions Harry makes, the way he acts.
yeah.
We don't understand all of it yet because we don't have it all, but I think Jim
But it's
Butcher did
there.
by this
Yeah,
point. He had that stuff laid out and he's just gonna parcel it out to us over time. And it's
Yeah.
very cool how he does it.
Also, speaking of Bob and
Um,
the Fae, I love this part late.
so
What?
I was just going to talk about Leanne and she and the she in general here.
Oh,
I
good.
had trouble for quite a while saying that name.
Oh, yeah.
It was Lianin Sidhe, what? And it wasn't until I finally did get a clip from the audiobook that I was like, "Oh, that's Lianin she? That's a she, and it's an
Mhm.
old Irish thing." So, oh,
Yep.
okay. Again, got it. Now I can say it.
Yeah.
But again, Jim Butcher, he's drawing from history and folk tales and myth, and he's bringing it into his world. So, one of the interesting things he ties in here with the Fae, the fairy folk, is iron. And
Mm.
again, there's parallels to our own mythologies on this. He's using this. Um, that might be important moving forward. Iron. We'll just drop that there.
Yeah.
Um, I'm
I
looking at
love
my notes. There's so many things we can talk about here, but there's
Yeah.
one I skipped over here that we do have to take a moment to talk about. We learn about ghosts. We had that, but we've learned in this book ghosts can be tortured. Okay, and that was part of Agatha
Yeah.
Hagglethorn's issue. She'd been driven insane by something that had been done to her, and we're gonna see that not only done just to ghosts, but to people on the spiritual level. That
Yeah.
that that spiritual barbed wire. This stuff was nasty.
That's one of my favorite scenes in the book. Where what's not Carmichael?
When we're getting to Mickey,
Yeah, Mickey Malone. Yeah,
yeah,
when he goes and he turns on the sight
hmm
and he sees this spiritual barbed wire and he's like pulling it out of Mickey like piece by piece, and Mickey is just in so much pain. He's like
yes,
crying as Harry's doing this. And then when Harry gets it off, Mickey is just like, "Oh my god, like it's just this instant relief of taking this spiritual pain away." And then Murphy comes in the room
oh
and
my
he's like,
goodness,
"Open the window, open the window." And she can't see what's going on. And this thing is like trying to, oh, it's so intense. And it's like latching onto Harry's arm. And
yes,
if it gets into him, he's going to, like, the same thing is going to happen to him that was happening to Mickey. Could you
right,
imagine Harry
oh,
taken over by that spiritual barbed wire? And
oh,
so he gets it out of the window at the last second and he burns it with fire. And Murphy is just like, "What is that all about?" And he looks at her and he gets this wonderful sight of her in this
oh my goodness,
angelic guardian, just beautiful, magical sight version of Murphy.
angelic warrior, herald, guardian angel, maybe images that come to mind from that moment. Yeah, um,
Exactly. And that's something that gets to stay with him forever. When he
yeah.
sees
Once you see
something
something with
great.
the sight, it never fades. That's right.
Yeah.
When I read that the first time, I was like, "Whoa, okay, that's gotta mean something."
Yeah.
Spoiler light. Yes, it means something. We aren't telling you squat. Keep reading.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Amazing. Now, speaking of amazing women that we get to meet in this series, I mean, Murphy, we just had her. We've met her before and stuff.
Mhm.
But Charity Carpenter is a character
Yes.
introduced here. Michael's better half. Um, Fun character. Again, we get introduced that there's history here. She can't stand Harry.
Oh, yeah.
We're like, what happened in the past? And the best you can piece together as you're reading this book is every time Harry and Michael get together, bad things happen, and she always worries about Michael. So she lacks the faith that Michael has.
Maybe I think that this is I love Charity Carpenter as a character. I dislike her at times, but I really think that a lot of thought went into her as a wife to Michael,
Yes.
because, like, think about it. If somebody was friends with your wife and was constantly getting her into trouble, or with your son or whatever, like, wouldn't you feel like that kind of, like, deep down you would feel this dislike for that person? Like, whenever you come around, this person that I love very much gets into trouble. And so I just love, I love the way that she's written, and kind of
Mhm,
where her
mhm.
arc goes. But also, real quick, I love this moment at the near the end of the book where Michael is like, we decided to name our baby Harry, and she's just sitting there in the hospital bed, like staring daggers at him.
Yeah.
Like, I do not want to name this kid Harry.
It's more like, "We? What?
Yeah.
We?"
You
And that
decided this.
typifies Charity so well because she 110% supports her husband.
Yeah.
Even when he's making decisions she is sure is
Oh,
so
yeah.
wrong, like doing things with Harry.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'll say one thing here. I think for all that Harry, you described it nicely. Harry's that friend who comes around and keeps dragging the husband into bad situations, and so of course she doesn't like him being around.
Yeah.
Yet she still sees somewhat in Harry what Michael sees in Harry, that he is a good guy. She doesn't hate Harry. She hates the
Right.
situations that result from Harry
Right.
out of protectiveness for her husband, but she acknowledges. So come on, okay, the kid's gonna be named Harry. Charity did sign off. She's not gonna admit it now, but she signed off. All right. A huge plot theme that's introduced in this story is the whole bit with the Redcorp Vampires. Now, we'd
Yes.
met Redcorp Vampires. We'd met Madame Bianca before. Okay, so we knew about this. But in this story, we get better introduction and understanding that there are 3 distinct types of vampires that are in this story. And there's more, but we're not going to talk about that right now. Okay, but 3 distinct types. So we've got the red, and they're the ones that aren't new. But we're also going to meet white court vampires, Thomas. And then we're going to meet black court vampires who had been referenced before, but now we get to meet Mavra of
Yeah.
the Black Court. But let's talk about these red court vampires now again. I mean, the things they get to do, the things that happen because of this. So Harry gets invited to go to a party.
Right.
He has to go. He doesn't want to go. Why can't he just turn it down?
Remind me. He was going there to figure out
Well,
who is calling forth all these spirits, right? And he thought that
he
with all
ends
the
up, yes,
vampires.
he ends up going with that motivation. He thinks there's stuff he needs to learn there. His detective nose is leading him there now.
Right.
But he's supposed to go because he's Chicago's local white council rep. Okay, so he's been invited as the representative of the white council. They've played that card. We don't know a lot about the white council yet. We know there's something behind it in the wizarding world and all,
Yeah.
and it's explained here. He has to go, or he would be not complying with the expectations of the white council. It would be an insult to the vampires, and that could be bad. And then he'd have the white council breathing down his neck again, which he just kind of got out of a couple books ago. So he doesn't want that back.
Well, good thing he avoided that.
Oh yeah, hey, dude, no problems now. Oh my goodness. But in this invitation, there is a guarantee of safety.
Yeah.
It's a drop. Yeah. Well, when those 2 vampires show up at his house, outside his house, to deliver the invitation, we had the reminder of the saliva thing. This is
Yeah.
interesting. Quite the element. Something with red court vampires. They can lick you, and you are all gaga now. Now, vampires, historically, in our mythology, have that power. Not necessarily by licking you, but they have a way to mesmerize you. So here we go.
Right.
Jim Butcher's rolling this in again.
Yep. I
Man.
just want to shout out Kyle with the Twilight GIF and chat. It's funny.
Yep. The meme action is strong in
Yeah.
Discords. So again, anyone can join us in live recordings by being a Patreon supporter. All tiers of our Patreon supporters can be here, and we can never fully explain the good fun that's happening over there. So
Yeah.
consider joining us. All right, so we'll talk more about vampires in a minute, but we got somebody else we get introduced as we're moving through the plot of the story that we need to talk about, and that's Morty. Mortimer Lindquist.
Oh yeah.
This dude who can see and communicate with spirits. Ha! He's introduced basically initially as a quack. You know, he's like running the psychic game. He's scamming people for money, but the problem is apparently he's legit.
Yeah.
What'd you think of Morty?
I like Mortimer. I probably don't think about him too often just because he only comes up here and there, but he's definitely an interesting character because he's not one of these he's not like a Harry or a Thomas who is like, yes, I'm going to stand up for the people that can't stand up for themselves and I'm going to get involved and help and whatever. He's like, yeah, I have this magical talent and I put it away because I didn't want it anymore. And I didn't want to be involved in the supernatural. I don't want anything to do with any of this stuff. I just want to make my money. He's like, I give people peace in my own way, whether it's real or not. Like they leave my house at the end of the day feeling like Uncle Frank forgives them or whatever,
Yeah.
And so, he's kind of got his own thing going on, but he is clued in because he kind of has what we learn in this book is in some way he kind of has this network that kind of keeps him connected to what's going on spiritually in the city. And so like he tells Harry, like, yeah, there was some crazy stuff going on. And Harry's like, is it a ghost? And he's like, it's a nightmare. And he's able to get these pieces of information that are important to Harry on not necessarily a political level, like what the red court's doing or what the white court's doing, but on a metaphysical, spiritual level, he can tell Harry kind of these things that are going on. And then he leaves Harry with those notes that help him out a lot.
He definitely was not happy to see Harry, though. He didn't want to talk to Harry. There's backstory. There's stuff that's happened between them. Okay. Yeah. But we do also learn a key thing from Mortimer, and that is that the Never Never and the real world, the wall between them has thinned. So there's something going on here. So we get that element from Mortimer.
Yeah.
Now,
I'm sorry. I have a quote here, if I can just say it real quick.
Yes.
Morty says, it's right when that happened, right when he's talking about how the wall is wobbling back and forth. And he says, look around you. The past 2 weeks, it's been waddling back and forth like a hooker at a dock workers convention. Oh my God, that was terrible,
I have never read a series that I have laughed out loud as much as the Dresden Files. So many things.
Oh my God.
All right. So it's in this point of the plot line that we actually have that episode that we've already referenced the bit at Mickey Malone's place, and where Harry is able to go there. We get this the bit about the threshold. He Mrs. Malone needs to invite him in. So it's reinforced here. He can't cross the threshold. I mean, he can cross the threshold, but he leaves a bunch of his power behind unless he's invited. Okay, so we get that. Right. But we also get highlighted here detectives Rudolph and Stallings. Not a lot about them, but Detective Rudolph, I think both of them, but definitely Detective Rudolph was relevant in the last story because he was the rookie.
Yeah.
During the Luke Garou issue, and he's seen some stuff, and it's already apparent he's kind of pretending he hasn't seen stuff. He's like, nope. Mm-mm. So none of this stuff with Harry, it's all bunk.
Right.
In Rudolph's, that's going to be relevant. Pay attention to how the detectives continue to interact with Harry. It's important.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Enough about that. Moving on. We learned about this. Oh, go ahead. You got something.
Oh, I was just going to say real quick, but Stallings was really cool because he was like, he wasn't fully like, oh yeah, I'm on board for the supernatural. But when Harry was talking to him about it, Stallings was like, really? Does it really work that way? But all right, man, like I understand. Like you do your thing. Like I trust you to know about the supernatural, to know the things that I don't know. And so
Mhm.
I had totally forgotten that about Stallings. It made him kind of a cool character in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. All the officers involved with special investigations, they're not like one uh
Note.
yeah, each one is unique. Each has their different perspective, their different beliefs, and the interactions that he has with the various different ones. It's a little more real than if, oh,
Yeah.
these are the ones that believe in the spooky stuff, and all the other cops are no, it's not like that. So I
Right.
appreciate that element to the story.
For sure.
So we've learned about the nightmare. Okay, nasty. What we learn initially about the nightmare, what we get from Harry's point of view, is it's the ghost of a demon that they believed had previously been summoned by Leonid Kravos, and it's now somehow become supercharged, and it's sucking Harry's magic away
Yeah.
through dreams. Whoa, nasty. Of
Yeah.
course, that's not what really is going on, but that's what we get originally. And then how diabolical is it that this nightmare then attacks Murphy as Harry?
Yeah. So I have a note about this because like that. So this is going to mess Murphy up in a ton of ways going
Mm-hmm.
forward, because not only what the nightmare did to her was like absolutely traumatizing, but it's wearing Harry's face. So imagine, someone that you are, best friends with or care very much for, and some supernatural thing wears their face to do something horrible to you. How can you ever look at that friend the same way again? Um,
Seriously.
and so this is a really interesting plot point that gets explored here and there throughout the next couple books. But I've always found it really, really, I guess, interesting, because that would be traumatizing on so many levels. Like, not only would it mess up kind of your psyche, but it would mess up like your day-to-day life with this other person that, what mask it was wearing.
And what we've learned in the relationship between Harry and Murphy over the first two stories and then implied of things that's gone on in between is that, they've had a somewhat tenuous relationship. She, for some reason, has come to trust that Harry knows stuff that other people don't know. So when there's one of these mysterious cases, Harry might have answers. And then, of course, there have been times where Harry wasn't sharing everything he knew, which ticked her off, and that hurt the trust. But then the trust is regained, and it's been back and forth. But we think they're at a point where, okay, Murphy's kind of on Team Harry.
Right.
She doesn't understand everything, but she believes that he knows what he's doing, and he's definitely telling her what she needs to know, and sometimes more, like she wants. They're getting there, and then to have this happen. So that scene when he goes to see her at her house and she's just a shell. She is
Yeah.
so broken at that point. It just hurts your heart to see
Yeah.
that. Oh man. And
Yeah.
Butcher wrote that really well.
Yeah.
So, all right. Nightmare isn't done. I mean, Murphy was one to get after. Okay, that happened. Well, who else can he go after? Michael. So Harry's got to go get to that, and the whole scene that
Oh,
happens, and the
yeah.
nightmare gets Charity.
Yeah.
Has her out at the cemetery. Now, we didn't
Oh,
even talk about the cemetery yet, but
yeah.
there's some stuff that's going to happen there. But Harry's got to go try to help. Michael's got to go try to help because, okay, Nightmare's got Charity. Oh, by the way, she's pregnant. It's just the tension is off the charts.
Yes.
And then she goes into labor in the middle of the battle.
Yep.
What else can we do to make this hard and tense? And sheesh.
Yeah, that is definitely one of the most intense scenes in the book, especially when Leah shows up and he's like, Harry is at the end of his power. Like he
He's
is.
been drained already by the
Yeah.
nightmare. He's hurting. He's been walloped with, of course, the vampire spittle too. You know, I mean, that
Yeah.
stuff's taken a toll over time. He is definitely drained at this point.
Yeah. And he just he has no more moves left. And so trying to get to Charity is extremely difficult. Does the nightmare actually do anything to Charity, or was it just like holding her back from Michael and Harry?
It's all threats at that
Right.
point. Nothing is done, but it's implied something's about to be done, and he's
Yeah.
got to stop it. That's the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Should we talk about the cemetery since we're here?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Talk about the cemetery, Spencer.
So this so this whole like sequence of events is so crazy because, like we mentioned, Harry is at the end of his magical limit, and so he makes another deal with Leah that, you know, she will kind of restore him and tell him how to get out of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And she just says, "It's all around you." And he's like, "What does that mean? Like, that doesn't help." And so then he somehow the sword gets out of Michael's hands and Harry grabs it. And he goes to take a swing at, I think, the nightmare, right? Am I remembering this correctly? He takes a swing at the nightmare.
And the nightmare at that point was not threatening him, wasn't doing anything to him.
Yes.
But Harry's just going to take him off the table. Here we go.
Yeah, because I think the nightmare was saying, "You're free to go." Like, you're like, if I remember correctly, he's like, you know, you can go. My quarrel is with these guys. And so it's another one of those moments where Harry is kind of like, all I have to do to save myself is walk away. But he can't do it. And so he takes a swing at the nightmare.
And Michael's like,
and
no!
The sword, yeah, Michael's like, it can't be used that way. And the sword is now forfeit, leaving Leah an opportunity to pick it up. And that is probably one of the most distressing points in the book. Like,
he's
that
lost Michael, the sword of the cross. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
And every time I read it, I'm like, oh, dude, like, that is just like the worst possible thing that can happen. Worse than Harry getting injured, worse than almost anything else that can happen. Amarachius getting into the hands of evil is just bad.
Yeah. And yet there's not even any time to really deal with it or process it because Charity's in labor.
I know.
We got to go. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and they get her to the hospital. Baby's going to be born. But, well, there's issues with that. We can come back to that.
Yeah.
But, okay. Leah, he made a bargain with Leah here. And then he breaks the deal again.
Mm-hmm.
There's a problem that comes from wizards breaking their word. So this is part of what's also hampering Harry then. When he hasn't been true to what he said he was going to do, we learn it causes them to lose some of their power. It can be regained over time eventually, but there's a real impact, which is why everyone in the supernatural world holds to their bond. Because they don't want to be weakened. This is a bad thing. You don't do this. Harry's made some bad calls here.
Yeah.
But we do get an element here in this part of the story of understanding what that first deal was with Leah. We don't get the whole background, but apparently Harry's original teacher, again, not the whole thing, but his original teacher, Justin, had sent a demon to kill Harry, and it was a bargain with Leah that helped Harry escape that.
Right. Yes.
And then he didn't fulfill his bargain. So that's why he's been avoiding and ducking his godmother ever since.
Yeah, I forget. I often forget that we get told about that this early on.
Yep. We don't get much for detail, but it's introduced. So more to come. Speaking of more to come, it's time to come to a vampire party.
Yes.
Okay. So that's the next major element in the story. Harry is now, for reasons, has decided to go to Madame Bianca's party. And he dresses up for it.
This reveal is one of the funniest things because we get a comment from Michael when they're in the truck or whatever, and he's like, "Are you really going to go in like that?" And that's when Harry's like, "Are you really going to go in like that?"
Yep.
But
Yep.
they go inside, and
Well, and before they get
even
inside, he gets the
Yeah,
reaction from Thomas
yes,
too. When he
yeah,
first meets him, oh, that's sure to make a bit of a stir. I mean, that's not the exact
yeah,
quote, but
yeah.
and Thomas doesn't. He kind of thinks it's funny,
Yeah, exactly. Thomas is like, I'm with you on this. This is a funny joke.
and that's where
And
we get that there's something different about Thomas.
right,
He's
yeah,
not a Madame Bianca type. He's something different.
right, exactly. And we get introduced to Janine there too. She's kind of this young girl that is enamored with Thomas and stuck to him like glue.
Now, Justine.
Yes.
You said Janine. I was like, wait a
Oh,
second. That's not another typo of mine, is
I'm
it? No,
no,
it's
I'm
Justine. I know it is.
I'm reading Night Angel right now, and the kind of damsel in distress is Janine.
Gotcha. I have not read that one yet. Zach has read that trilogy. I haven't
You
got
would
there
love
yet.
it. You would love it.
So Thomas and Justine. Yeah, they have an interesting relationship we come to learn here.
Mm-hmm.
Because Thomas is a white court vampire.
Yeah.
Justine is she's human.
Right.
She's not a vampire. What do they
And
have to do with each other? What do we learn here?
so mostly white court vampires do not have long-term relationships in the kind of human idea of the term. They have they may have long-term like sexual relationships where they're constantly feeding on one of their servants or something, but they don't have like this idealized like boyfriend girlfriend type relationships. And so as the book kind of goes on, I forget how exactly it's kind of explained at the party, but Thomas is fearful of people poaching Justine from him. And as this book goes on, we start to see that he cares more about her than a vampire usually would. Like she gets stuck at Bianca's house, and he's like, "You got to go back for her." And so we kind of get this sense that there's something more going on there.
She's not just a food source for him.
Right.
There's
Yes.
something a little special going on there.
Yeah.
The description of her outfit. Wait
for
a second.
Thomas?
What outfit? No, Justine's.
Oh,
like,
yeah. Thomas too. I think he's got like butterfly wings and a Speedo or something.
A little Adonis. Yes, it's something. And I love how we learn that he's here at the party in a similar way that Harry's here at the party. Harry's here as the one of the White Council, the representative, and Thomas is here as the representative of the White Court. Don't really care about these red vampires, but they were invited. Well, his house was invited as the ruling house.
That's right.
And Thomas is the one that everyone hates. So it's an insult to the Reds that Thomas is the one that's been sent.
Right.
It's like, nice. And so Thomas is just leaning into it. Yep, I'm going to tick everyone off. Hey, you're going to tick everyone off. Hey, you want to hang out?
Exactly. Yeah.
Great.
And it also makes it really dangerous for Thomas because he knows that if or Bianca knows that if she kills Thomas, like his dad won't care. Like nobody's going to come after her for killing Thomas. So he's kind of on his guard a little bit too. Right.
And yes, but there is something here as they enter that they're both aware of. Harry's aware of, Thomas is aware of. Protection for guests.
That's true, yeah.
They've been invited, so there are rules here. And neither of them can be killed without major repercussions coming on Madame Bianca as the host of the house. And so this is something, we've got to follow some rules here. We're going into the lion's den, but so long as we follow the rules, we've got some protection.
But they can get it done in sneaky ways, though. They can like all the wine or whatever was drugged, and they're like, oh, we were just trying to make people have a good time with some drugged beverage causing everyone to be high or drunk or whatever. Like we didn't think that he would overdose from
there
it.
are ways around
Yeah.
it, so you got to be on guard. That's definitely it. We get another character introduced here because there's a whole bunch of different people here at this party now, and a lot of them are red vampires, but there are some others. Mr. Pharaoh was an interesting one. You don't realize who that is at first, but you get it before too long. It's a freaking dragon. We've got a dragon.
And he does not like Michael.
Oh, no. And then we're feeling our way through this event. There's things happening. There's insults being tossed. Harry, of course, in his Bela Lugosi vampire outfit is, just...
Oh, yeah, that's what we were getting to.
Yeah, it's just a hoot. A big insult, but can't do anything. I haven't broken any rules. I just dressed up.
I love how when the spotlight finally comes on to him and he gets to say his thing, he's like, wait, weren't we supposed to show up? Isn't it a masquerade party? Aren't we supposed to show up as things we're not? And everybody else is like obviously looking at like a vampire. So I don't know. It's just a huge insult. And it's hilarious.
It's great. But they're navigating the circumstance. It's tense. There's a lot of danger. And then Susan shows up. And it all goes to heck. Because she doesn't have the protection because she's crashing the party.
Right.
Oh, she's got an invitation. Yeah, a fake one because she copied Harry's invitation to get by the door. Nope, that's all gone south. So while Harry still has protection, Susan does not. And
oh my God.
It leads to him ending up having to break his word and just bad.
Yeah, there's
bad.
There's a ton of stuff that happens right around that with Mavra too. Weren't they about to leave and then Mavra stops them?
Yep.
And she's like, only one of you can go, or only two of you can go, or something.
And we learn, she's Blackcourt vampire. So that's one of the really, I'm here to suck your blood vampires. But not only that, it turns out she's a wizard or a sorcerer. She's been playing with the black magic. That's not what vampires usually do. So, this is all sorts of bad.
Yeah. Yeah, Mavra is scary because she's been around forever for like I can't even remember how old she is, but
she goes way back. Yes.
Yeah, and so she's very powerful, very scary looking, and Blackcourt are interesting because they're kind of a mix of like your typical zombie and vampire. I feel like. I feel like they don't really fit.
The young ones are very dumb, very just needs driven. Yeah, they're not thinking much yet. But if they last long enough, then they become these uber powerful, cruddy things. That's what I get from that.
Right.
So we've got a few things that go on here. Leah makes another deal in the midst of this party thing, but not with Harry this time.
Right.
Make a deal with Susan to help Harry because Harry practically has no power at all and stuff's clearly about to go very bad. So he needs some power. So innocent little deal says, you need to give me a year of your memory. She's like, that sucks, but okay, sure. How bad it is. And what Leah does, it takes a year. But not a consecutive year. It just takes all the memories involving Harry.
Right.
Whoa. That was dirt. That was a dirt move.
Yeah.
Not cool.
And I forget how does she even get that memory back by the end of the book? Does turning into a vampire release that? Or
no, Harry does it. Harry's magically reconnects her with it. Back when they're later on when he's rescuing her.
That's right.
He's able to do something to shock her memories back, basically.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, But we're not done with the actual party still.
Right.
Madame Bianca shares her gift because everybody gets a gift. And the gift she has for Harry
is a tombstone.
Tombstone.
Yeah.
What was it that's on there?
He died doing the
died-
right thing.
Yes.
Oh my god. And the funny thing is like that is going to come into play in so many ways in all the future books, but the way that it's used in this one was so cool because they have Lydia on the stage and they're going to give her to I think they're just giving her to the Reds or something as a present, right? Leah is
to be
used
with the big grand reveal,
right?
The unmaking of Amarachius,
right? Whoa. And so it all kind of ties, this short little thing that happens all ties in together so well because the gravestone being marked, he died doing the right thing. When Harry sees that they're about to try to break Amarachius by spilling the blood of the innocent, like Bianca just kind of looks at him. Are you going to do the right thing? Like
time to go.
Time to go. And it is just such a clever, it makes me so happy how all of that is woven together in that scene. I really love it.
And then we get to see, long story short, Harry burn a building down.
Well, before that, Thomas kicks Susan into the crowd of vampires.
That was nasty. That was like, whoa.
And honestly,
and he loses Justine anyways. You know,
right?
Because he's gonna do what he has to do to get Justine back, and that doesn't work. We're gonna get, oh man, everything goes very bad.
And honestly, I forgot when I was doing this reread, I forgot about Thomas kicking Susan into the crowd. And I obviously no spoilers or anything, but I can't remember how Harry forgives him. Like I can't remember how that specific thing is mended. And so
in the end, I think it comes down to, and I'm not talking about future stuff, but it comes down to just, I think Harry can understand eventually. It was a no-win situation, and Thomas did what he had to do for the one he cared for.
Right. Yeah.
Harry does the same thing. He is willing to do the same thing. You know, he'll prove that. Yeah. So I think there's a bond there in that understanding that it wasn't personal.
Yeah.
It's, you do what you got to do for the one you love.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay. So again, it ends up going badly. A bunch of people die. Place gets burned down because Harry just goes nuclear. He's got power back thanks to the deal that was made, and he ends up having to use it, and it's a catastrophe. But in the end, they lose both Susan and Justine.
Yeah. And they still didn't get Amarachius.
What's that?
They still didn't get the sword, Amarachius.
Yeah, so it's not exactly a successful experience. But at least they're still alive.
Yeah.
Moving through the plot, we do still have this thing with Nightmare. You know, this whole big thing that just happened and nothing to do with Nightmare.
Right.
But we do still have that going on. Now we discover that it's actually not a demon, not the ghost of a demon. It's the ghost of Leonid Kravos.
Right.
Disguised as a demon, because that would throw Harry off. And it's all really been about getting some revenge on Harry.
Yep.
Okay. We're going to have to deal with that. Before we deal with that, we've still got to deal with getting back Justine and Susan.
Right.
That happens.
If I can ask something real quick, how do you feel about these two storylines kind of interweaving? Like, do you feel like they did a good job interweaving?
Yes, to the extent that it's somewhat chaotic.
Yeah.
Which helps us feel some of what Harry is feeling in this story, with his power getting sucked away, with things going on around him that he has no control over. It's chaos.
Yeah.
So the story kind of plays into that for the reader. You also feel a little out of control. What the heck is going on? Powerless, So
That's
maybe I'm
true.
reading a little too meta into it, but that's how I take from it. Yeah.
I kind of feel like, you know, whenever I think back to Grave Peril, I forget a lot of the kind of intricacies of how the plots kind of work together. And I feel like the future books do this a lot better, where they'll have two plots going on at one time, or sometimes three
Mm-hmm.
plots, and they
Mm-hmm.
kind of interweave. I definitely, in my opinion, I kind of feel like this one is a little too odd and
Okay.
just the
Yeah.
way that they're put together. But I feel like in later books, the timelines, the two stories that are going on,
Yeah.
work very well together.
There's no denying we can see Jim Butcher's growth as an author as he moves through the books. So you're
Yeah,
100% correct. I agree with you. And we'll see him do something like this better as he moves through the books.
right.
All right. So again, I don't want to share everything that happens in the story because you got to read the story to fully appreciate it. But
Right.
we do have a scene where Harry does rescue Justine and Susan. Now he went to rescue Susan and Justine's there too, but rescuing Justine's not hard.
Right.
Rescuing Susan, well, that's a difficult matter because
Yeah.
she's been turned. Sorta. What
Yeah.
did you think of that? She's in an in-between state. This was interesting.
Man, that is one of the most painful reveals in the series. I feel like I like in my opinion, I just feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
obviously we haven't spent that much time with Susan up to this point, but if you've read the whole series going back to this book, it's like one of the most painful moments
Yeah.
after getting to know her later.
Yeah. I mean,
Um
you do come to understand again that they've really built a relationship here.
yeah,
And this what's been done to her now, which is in good part her fault,
right.
but she didn't know what she was doing, really. You know,
Yeah.
now makes it that wow, he can't just fix what's happened.
There is
And
no fix,
instead
yeah.
there's this danger now. I mean, she's gonna want to eat him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she can't control that. And if that happens, yeah, wow. And she doesn't even have all her memories. And Discord reminds us, you know, it's love that brings the
Yes.
memories back, the
I w
magical power of love.
I was just about to say that I every time I read this book, I literally get choked up every time he tells her, "I love you," for the first time. That is such
Yep.
a powerful scene that is just like, "Ah, it's too late." Like, it's
And it can't cure everything. That's
yeah,
right. That's right.
it worked in the scene to, like, shake her back into, like, where he needed her to be for the scene, but you should have done this earlier, Harry. It's
Yes. Yes,
it's
you
such
should
a
have.
it's such a powerful and emotional scene, but it's also really, really, really tragic
It is.
because if he had said that earlier, maybe things would have gone differently. I don't know.
Yep. Yep. Now this is going to jump us back to the other plot line because now we got to deal with Kravos, Nightmare, and what they come up with. I admit, really confused me the first time I read it. I'm like, what's going on? So okay, we got to let Kravos kill Dresden, but because the line between worlds is thin, Harry's going to be able to be
This
resuscitated,
yeah.
but have his spirit self and himself be able to take down Kravos. I'm like, okay, wow, this was a
Yeah.
little weird
It-
and confusing. Um, but I
yeah.
I did like the fact that then Harry was able to absorb Kravos, and by
Yes.
doing so, get his power back. That part that made sense.
Yeah. Then
What did you
he's
think of all this? The two
so
Harrys and
So that is a really confusing scene. I think that, you know, if I were to look back on my first time reading it, I probably didn't understand it and just kind of went with it. But now looking back, now reading it again, after many times of rereading it, I definitely understand it. Like, it's kind of the whole thing that we're learning with Agatha Hagglethorn. It goes all the way back to that when somebody
yes,
dies, a
his
snapshot is
shade.
taken. and this shade is created. And since they're in this kind of dream spiritual world, the shade is there and able to act physically. And then of course Susan resuscitating him. And then Harry also says something interesting. He's like, after a shade serves its purpose, then it goes away.
Mm-hmm.
And so Harry's shade was specifically made to serve this function. And once it does that, it has no more reason to be a shade anymore and moves on to, wherever it goes. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. But then
it was still a risky move. He was taking a chance here.
Are
Yeah,
you
big
kidding
time.
me? Dude, that is a huge risky move. But like you said, then he gets Kravos's power. And this is interesting because he gets into the hall and he's throwing magic and he says a spell in a different language and casts some spell that's completely unfamiliar to him because he's got Kravos's power inside him. And that's something that I've only caught on to in the last couple rereads. But that is super interesting. Like,
totally.
It shows that everybody has their very own like specially designed way that they use magic, and if you have a part of them, you can tap into that for sure.
I did enjoy the direct interaction between Harry and his shade.
Oh yeah.
Again, just a touch of humor.
Try not to die again.
Yeah, it was good. It was
working
good.
on it.
All right, the final finish, where just a couple last key points of the story, is the one where, okay, they've defeated Kravos, they've gotten the girls back, all is good, and Madame Bianca shows up again. Gonna stop their escape, but offers a compromise. Give me Susan, and you can all go.
Right.
So she's made a fair offer. Susan is already part vampire. It's fair.
Yeah.
And Harry's like, heck no, and uses that spell to bring the ghosts of all the victims down on the vampires, destroying them.
Oh, yeah.
And sets up war. Okay, now we have a war. We might have more that happens with that.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, this specific incident sets things in motions for the next 10 books, I think.
Many, many, many books. Yep.
Yeah.
You might have crossed a line, Harry.
Yeah.
Was he justified? Is that the play he should have made? Or should he have said, well, yeah, it sucks, but here you go. You got Susan. I can't do anything for her anyways.
Man, that's such a hard decision.
There's a lot of argument back and forth about that.
Yeah, because knowing what happens later, there's a lot of things that wouldn't be able to happen later if it wasn't for this incident.
Right.
But also, I guess the moral answer is it comes down to Susan and what she wants to do, because will she be happier as a half-turned, or will she be happier as a Redcorp vampire? And so, in a couple ways, Harry kind of gave her more of a choice to make her own decision in that moment, so that it probably was the right thing. It's so complicated.
It is. I like what Emmeline says in Discord, though, that it's just not Harry.
It's just not Harry.
He did as he felt was right.
Yeah.
Yep. Couldn't have done other. I really couldn't have done anything else. Yeah.
And calling forth all those spirits was just awesome.
I mean, that was justice. That was great.
That was justice. Like, just like Brandon Sanderson says, like, err on the side of awesome. Like that was that was super, super cool.
But he did definitely take action against Bianca that was not necessary, and starts a war.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. But we were all going, yeah, at that moment. Take him down. Well done, Harry. All right.
Yeah.
The final last thing of the story is like, oh.
Yes. Oh my God, it's so sad.
Finally, he's acknowledged he loves Susan. He proposes. She's like, I can't.
Yeah.
I have to go.
Oh my God. It's so sad. And then she leaves him a postcard, and oh my god, that
We're
ending is just
down on our luck, Harry Dresden. Yeah.
yeah. And this is going to be really, I'm not going to give anything away, but this is going to be really interesting going into the next book, because we see how Harry is mentally and even
Coping,
physically coping
dealing.
with the
Yeah.
fallout of this.
Yeah.
Um,
Because this leaves wounds, man. You don't just, oh, well, and bounce back on with your life. No, no, there's marks. So
yeah.
that kind of flows nicely into just, I wanted to ask, any final thoughts as we wrap up our discussion of Grave Peril? That was a good one. The repercussions that we're going to see in Harry moving forward, they're very natural. You don't
Yeah.
just shake this off and move on. There's stuff. Obviously, there's going to be repercussions amongst the vampires. That's really laid out here that there's more to come.
Yeah, for sure. I think that just the final thing I want to mention is I have the book open here. These Jim Butcher just has a way of ending these books. Like just the final page in every single one of these books is so well worded, and it just gives you either a sense of dread or joy or hope or whatever emotion he's going for. He absolutely
Yeah,
nails it. So if I can, I'd like to just read like the last paragraph of this book. Is that cool?
please do, sir. We'll enjoy the
Um,
ride again.
so let's see. There was a knock at my door. I climbed up from the lab. Murphy and Michael had shown up at my door with a care package, soup and charcoal and kerosene for me as the weather got colder. Groceries, fruit, uh, groceries and fruit. Michael had rather pointedly included a razor. How are you doing, Dresden? Murphy asked me, her blue eyes serious. I stared at her for a moment, then at Michael. I could be worse, I said. Come in. Friends, they make it better. So the vampires are out to get me, and every other wizard on. Oh, sorry. So the vampires are out to get me, and every other wizard on the block. The little wizardlings of the city, the have nots of magic, are making it a point not to go outside after dark. I don't order pizza for delivery anymore, not after the first guy almost got me with a bomb. The council is going to be furious at me, but what else is new? Susan doesn't call, doesn't visit, but I got a card from her on my birthday, Halloween. She only wrote she only wrote 3 words. I'll let you guess what 3. Doesn't that just fill you with a
Yeah,
sense of like, let's
exactly.
go, like
Yeah,
I love those endings so much.
totally, totally. Well, that was great.
Yeah,
What a good book. Good story. If you're a first time reader of the Dresden Files and you've just watched all of this, haven't enjoyed book 3, we hope you've already moved on to book 4. Emmeline in Discord is already into book 4
nice.
because we're going to keep bringing these episodes out. I've got more planned. So good stuff. Keep going. This is a great series. You won't regret it. Spencer, again, thank you for being here today. This has
For
been
sure.
fun. I love talking about a great book with somebody else who's definitely appreciated and enjoyed it like 15 times, 16 times,
Yeah.
however many. Remind those who have really enjoyed hearing from you today of where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find us mostly on YouTube, the Fantasy Files podcast. We are on Spotify, but we only have like 10 episodes up on there. I've been meaning to put more on Spotify because it's still billing me every month. So so I'll do that soon. But also you can find us on Twitter at Files Fantasy if you like probably immature humor and ramblings about fantasy and pictures of my dog. So
There you go. This channel appreciates pets. We have mostly cat photos that show in one of our channels. Check it out in the Discord. But we do have dogs that show up there too. I don't know if
nice.
we've had anything else yet. Fish, birds, I haven't seen, but we got a lot of cats and dogs. So, all right, I'm going to send our outro here, and then we get to kind of chat just a little more as it's going. Zach and I usually make fun of it, but
Oh,
let
cool.
me add this to our stream. There we go. Just real quick gives everybody those last details of, like and subscribe, join us in all the places. And Emmeline in Discord can never hear the music from this. So it's funny. She sees me gesturing. She's like, I don't know what you're gesturing at, Jim.
Good music, though.
There you go. I got this on that same place that you found.
It's hard to find a good outro and intro song sometimes.
They have a nice selection there.
Yeah.
All right. We'll talk to you next time, everyone.